Welcome to Holy Health, the podcast where cutting-edge health insights meet timeless biblical wisdom. Join us as we explore the latest in wellness, fitness, and mental health, all while grounding our journey in the spiritual truths and guidance found in the Torah. Whether you're looking to nourish your body, mind, or soul, we'll help you live a life of balance, vitality, and faith. Tune in to discover how to achieve holistic health through the perfect blend of modern science and ancient wisdom. Let's dive into the fullness of life, body, and spirit together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Holy Health. I am so excited to bring you guys this week's episode, which I'm sort of coining a healthy relationship between Christians and Jews. When I had the privilege of meeting Tommy Waller a couple of months ago at the JNS Symposium, I was so completely just taken aback because though I've met many Christians, I'd never had these kind of conversations with anyone, and it really got the old brain working and making me think that we needed to do an episode, something to do with a healthy relationship. How should we as Jews really view Christians? I'd never personally looked too much into the New Testament or into the different types of Christians that there are. And I'd never really, especially not in recent years, I've been living in Israel the past 15 years, had too much contact with many Christians. And I really felt that everyone needed to hear what Tommy had to say. So for those of you who don't know who Tommy Waller is, I kind of call him the patriarch of the Waller family, but I want you guys to hear who he is. So Tommy Waller stood in the vineyards of Har Bracha in May of 2004, just weeks after his 11th child was born. The scriptures came alive to him as an Orthodox Jew and pioneer of the vineyards on the mountains of Samaria. Near Levi, read Jeremiah 31:5 to him. A dedicated Christian all his life by devoted Baptist parents and grandparents, Tommy had never experienced the physical reality of God as he did that day. Forever changed, he returned to Tennessee, where he and Sherry began the process of selling their farm in a non-electric Amish community and launching out to tell the world about the return of the Jewish people and the restoration of the land. The church they grew up in needed to hear what they were banking their faith on. The entire Waller family worked tirelessly to build the Ha-Yovel organization with genuine love and a heartfelt desire to see the kingdom of God return to Jerusalem. Today, many marriages and grandchildren later, the organization has grown to reach millions around the world with the truth of the special calling of the Jewish people and the Christians who stand with them in the greatest redemption of all time. So since recording with Tommy a couple of weeks ago, all of a sudden, on Instagram and around me, I'm seeing different Christians really speaking out about their love of Israel and the Jewish people. And I was able to view this in a way that was different than I'd been viewing it prior to my conversation with Tommy. And I want to read you guys something that came out just a few days ago. There is someone called the Misfit Patriot. He is a Christian. His name is Zach something. I think he's from Boston. And he is fantastic. He is constantly supporting Israel and the Jewish people. And just a few days ago, he came out with this post where it was a snap, like a screenshot of, I guess, something that he had posted on X, and somebody replied to him. So the person that replied to him wrote, "Saw your post on X, just wanted you to know we Catholics do not stand with the Jews. The Catholic Church is the," and then I can't read anymore, it was like a ... But he replied with, I don't know where he took it from, but the Second Vatican Council's declaration, Nostra, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Atete affirms that God's covenant with the Jewish people has never been revoked, and official Catholic teaching holds that the Old Covenant retains its value and that the Jewish people remain most dear to God. Modern Catholic documents reaffirm the abrogationist supersessionism, the view that Christianity has replaced Judaism entirely. And then I can't really read the rest, but then he basically wrote underneath, yes, they do. And then, if you guys know who Xavier is, he's another one of my favorites because Xavier is a black, ultra-conservative, gay, Republican American, and he is super supportive of Israel and the Jewish people. And just this morning, I saw him on Instagram talking about how Christianity, if you're a good Christian, then you absolutely better be supporting Israel and the Jewish people. And all of this was sort of news to me because I always thought that Christians were there to try to convert us, because if we don't convert to Christianity, then I guess or if I'm saying this wrong, please, I don't mean to offend anybody. I think it's that our souls may be burned for all eternity. I'm not sure, because like I said, until meeting Tommy, I really didn't know, I guess, what many Christians believe. And then last Friday night, ambassador from the U.S., Musach Haguf, came to my shul, Shirat David, with Rav Shlomo Katz. And when I tell you it was standing room only, as it usually is in shul, but the atmosphere and the power in the tefillot were just unbelievable. He got to see Shirat David at its best. And when Rav Shlomo got up to talk, everybody just started cheering when he mentioned, Musach Haguf. And as I'm walking home from shul, this brought up a really interesting conversation with my youngest daughter and her friend, who actually said, are Christians allowed to be in shul with us? Like, I didn't think it was okay. And I said, first of all, girls, do you think Rav Shlomo would have something that wasn't okay? Like, you know who Rav Shlomo is, you know his principles, you know what he stands on. Do you think if it wasn't okay for Musach Haguf to be in shul, that he would have been there? And then this sort of brought up a discussion where they were telling me, I don't know if this is really the opinion of their rabbis, but one of her friends, and I started telling them a little bit about what I'd learned from Tommy, how in order for Mashiach, or the Messiah, to come, Christians and Jews actually have to work together. And right away, her friend said, no, we hate Christians. And I'm like, hold on. We do not hate anybody. And I started to explain to them about the prophecies and the things that you guys are going to hear from Tommy. And this brought up a really wonderful point of discussion with my daughter and her friend, where they were trying to tell me, which may be the opinion of some of their rabbis, of some of the things they learned last year. And I had to say, girls, listen to me. We know there's Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. We know that even amongst our rabbis, sometimes there's been arguments and people don't always agree with each other. Number one, you have to be open to listening to people. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. You have to listen. And I said, ultimately, we are all working together to bring Mashiach. And isn't this a beautiful thing? Isn't it the best that we're all working together to bring Mashiach? When Mashiach comes, none of us know what's really going to happen. No one really knows. When Mashiach comes, what we do know is everybody's going to see truth. So whatever truth is, we're all going to see truth. But the most important thing is that we are working together to bring that truth. And I think that, to me, was the most important thing. And later on, my daughter kind of apologized. She's like, Ima, I'm sorry I was going on and I wasn't letting you talk. And I said, I said to her, I'm proud of you. I want you to be able to debate topics and to be able to discuss them. But I want you to also always be open to listening to other people as well. So with that, I want you guys to enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. And as always, I love your comments. I love your feedback. By the way, if any of you know Musach Haguf and you could get this episode to him, I think he might really enjoy it. So if any of you know him, please pass it on to him. And of course, as always, pass it on to your friends. And I love feedback. You guys know where to find me on any of the podcasting platforms, on Instagram, holy_health podcast, or my main account, Dara PT613. Feel free always to reach out to me. And again, as I said last week, I'm looking for some new people to help me with Torah extras. If you feel you have something to offer, I would love to speak to you. And if you feel you have a topic of relevance, anything that we can deem somehow related to health, like we said, it doesn't always have to be health in the physical sense. It can be health in the spiritual sense, which is what we're trying to do here today. Please feel free to reach out to me. And I hope that putting this out into the world is going to be another piece of helping us get closer to bringing Mashiach. As always, I wish you guys a Shabbat Shalom. Hey everyone, so I am so excited to have Tommy here with me today. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your setting aside the time.
Dara, I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, it's really, really excited and really enjoyed. We were talking before that our meeting, I thought it was a very special meeting in Jerusalem. And so I'm very, very glad to get together again.
Me too. So I want you guys to get to hear some of what I had heard from Tommy. I met Tommy at the JNS symposium, and I'm someone who typically goes to sleep early. I like to be in bed by like 10:30 every night. And I actually sat at the table talking to him till after midnight because he is just such an interesting person. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy hearing his story. So, Tommy, if you could give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what led you to Israel, just
Yeah. Yeah, it's an unusual story, and certainly a God story. One of those I didn't write the story. I wouldn't have written the story when I was when I got married or when I was in college or never saw it coming. But I'd always been kind of a spiritual mind. I'd grown up in the church, and but I honestly never met a religious Jew in my life until I came to Israel. And it was never, when I was growing up in a Baptist church. Some of your listeners may be familiar with Christian terms, or Christian denominations, but probably don't have a lot of who they are. But it was, we had our religious activity. We went to church every time the doors were open, and Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays, where those were the days we were in church. But Israel was, all in the Bible, but what it was something that was more spiritualized than something that you could touch, something you could, that it wasn't something that we thought we'd see coming, but something that you would experience after death, like you're going to heaven, and this was the Israel, this was Israel. So, yeah, I got married, and my wife and I we're a little bit we're already kind of wired kind of strangely, and I don't know how to put it any other way. We are very strange people, and
I
so
just have to say I like strange because I'm a little strange too.
you know what? When I met you, I think we connected on that.
Yeah.
Like strange is good. But there was a lot of things working in our favor because we didn't want to raise our children. And matter of fact, it's a long story how we ended up with 11 children. I only have a brother, and she has a brother and a sister. So how we got there is that's another story altogether. But it was like, I want my children to make it. I want them to be spiritual. I want them to know God. And we were really searching. How do we do that? Interesting in the 90s when we're kind of going through this, having our children. We Y2K was approaching, and I don't know if you remember or had anything or thought about it on any. But Y2K was the end of the world. I mean, we were like the end of the world as we knew it. It wasn't like the world was just going to go away. We were going to wake up January 1st without television, without telephones, without electricity, without anything. So Sherry and I in 98 I ended up leaving. I had a position at FedEx. Had been there for 13 years out of college. It was great. It was a great job, and I loved it. Loved working there, but it was nothing. There was nothing like motivating spiritually about working at FedEx. I was just making sure Dolly Parton's wigs got to her next concert. I worked out of Nashville. So when Y2K was coming, I had grown up on a farm. Back up a little bit. Grew up in Lebanon, Tennessee, not
Wow.
Lebanon. You have to be careful to emphasize Lebanon. I was born in Lebanon, Tennessee, not the Lebanon here. And I grew up on a farm on Tater Peeler Road. Tater Peeler Road. Yeah. I mean, it was really Tater Peeler Road. Literally, the name was, the legend was that you had a truckload of potatoes, and by the time you got to the end of the road, they were all peeled because the road was so bumpy. And so I grew up on a farm. I wasn't afraid of Y2K. I was kind of excited about it. Like, okay, wow, no electricity. We've lived without electricity for longer than we've had electricity in the world. And I was really getting excited about it. So me getting excited about it was like thinking that I'll go buy. There were these homesteading magazines out, and people, Mother Earth News and all these other magazines that were like talking about living off the land, and I wanted to raise my children outside of the run and gunning world that we were living in, and it was we ended up actually selling everything we had, and we bought a farm in the middle of an Amish community. We never became Amish.
Oh, wow.
We bought a farm in the middle of an Amish community because I mean, it kind of fell in front of us actually. These guys have been doing it all their lives. They never didn't need electricity. They didn't use electricity. They weren't using vehicles or anything. And I thought, well, what better people to learn from how to live off the land.
Just
And
to insert a question, did they not have a problem with the fact that you guys weren't Amish, thinking you would infiltrate their community? And little side
yeah,
note.
oh yeah. No, you know what? There's a lot of similarities here, and I think this is where the God story kind of takes place here because the Amish are very closed, closed community. You almost have to have the right last name to be part of them. You got to have an Amish name. Like you have to have a Jewish name. You can tell a Jewish name, an Amish name. And so I didn't have an Amish name. I don't have a Jewish name either. I don't think
Well,
I have a Jewish name. And so we ended up buying this farm, and we move our at that time 8 children. We're going out, and we started living off the land. We are. My children, my oldest was 13. He started immediately working with the horses and and just we farmed and did everything just without electricity or we didn't have indoor plumbing.
wow.
Our phone we did have a phone because this is for the sake we didn't have a phone in our house. We had a phone like in our little community. We had probably like 3 farms that were close to us, and we all had this one phone that we go to like down the road that
It's
everybody used.
it's like living on a
And
kibbutz in the 60s or 70s,
there you go.
you know.
There you go. So that was it. And honestly, it was a dream. My children still talk about it today like a storybook. And we thought we were going to live there the rest of our lives. And as God does things, I had some friends. I had friends still in the real world. So Y2K came, and it didn't have, the end of the world didn't happen. I was kind of disappointed a little bit because I was ready for it. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to go back. I was like, this is the way we want to live like this. So we got to 2004, and I had some friends, like I said, in the real world, and they said, hey, we're going to Israel. A couple of friends of mine, and we've got a product that we're wanting to. This is after 9/11. Israel had developed this biological and chemical warfare filtration systems in houses and hospitals and all these kind of things that and the U.S. was really concerned about what was going to happen to it at that time. They were working with some people here to bring the product over to the U.S. I said, and they asked me if I wanted to go. I mean, I'm literally look like an Amish guy.
Yeah.
I got broadfalls on and a hat and I said, you sure you want me to go? I mean, I'm going to be kind of like stand out from. And they said, no, we want you to come with us. And so I went, and somehow in the 2 weeks that I was here, I ended up here and on Mount Gerizim. I'm speaking right now from Mount Gerizim in Samaria in the Shomron, and I met a vineyard owner named Nir Levi. He has the Harberka winery now. And at the time when I met him in 2004, he had like 8 rows of vines, and we were standing in those vines here on this mountain, and he read to me from the prophecy of Jeremiah. I guess Jeremiah. And when he read me the prophecy in chapter 31, it's like it hit me like, wow, God is doing something. Like this is serious. Like I'm seeing something. I didn't see this on Taterpillar Road. Like I didn't see this in Rocky Valley Baptist Church. This wasn't happening there. But God, the prophet Jeremiah said that there would be vineyards planted on the mountains of Samaria. There hasn't been vineyards here in almost 3,000 years. 3,000 years. And I'm seeing it. And I'm with my buddies. They brought me here because, hey, Tommy's a farmer. Let's take him up and let's let him see some. Somebody knew that we were with this guy that had the vineyard near. And when he read it to me, I just, like, my heart just went like, whoa, wow, God is real, and I said, I just blurted out. I said, listen, I'm not Jewish. Wait, is there anything? Can I do something? Can I be part of this? And he said, yeah, we need help. It was at the end of the Intifada. There were still suicide bombers, and there were bombings that were going on. There were actually bombs found in the vineyard,
Oh, wow.
and that it was not working for the Palestinians. The labor that they had here available here was not trustworthy. And Jews, honestly, to be honest with you, Jews, it's not jobs that Jews need because it's seasonal, right? Harvesting is seasonal, and a lot of the things that you really need help with is seasonal, like pruning. You need to get this, pruning that just takes place maybe a month out of the year. Harvest maybe 6 weeks or a month out of the year. It's not like that's not where you want to be. If you're living in Israel, you need a job you can have. And it's perfect for people like us that can come here seasonally and help out. And so we began to come, and we began to invite other people with us. And by 2007, we had created a nonprofit where we were bringing people over called Ha-Yovel. Now, I didn't know. I asked somebody in Hebrew. I said, the name in Christianity is Jubilee. We understood Jubilee, like
Right.
Jubilee. We understood, and that's why I said, I feel like this is like the Jubilee. Like this is like it's something that's happening. And what? How do you say Jubilee in Hebrew? And they said Yovel. And how do you say the Jubilee? They said Ha-Yovel. And I said, okay, we're gonna call it Ha-Yovel. And at the time, I didn't know really how significant the name was because I didn't understand the weight of the name,
Right.
how much it had to do with the redemption, how much it had to do with everything that was happening, including the nations. What part the nations have to do with the restoration of Israel and the support and the standing with that the nations have. And we never, I don't think we ever looked back. We actually lived with near our family. I mean, I felt like we were like the Beverly Hillbillies. We loaded up the family, and we came here. Initially, it was just seasonal. It was 3 months in the fall, and then we'd come back maybe a month or so in the winter for the pruning, and then we would go around just trying to get other people to come and help out. And it changed our life. It changed our theology. Like I understood who I honestly understood who God. I always say I understand who God is. That's a big thing. But I understood what God was doing, and it wasn't. He was saying to the world, "I'm still here." Uh, you being Jewish, And I want to say this to every Jew. It's just such a big deal that you come back. That you're here. That you don't. And it's disturbing to see the pushback because before 1948 nobody was arguing whether you were Jewish or not. But now when you came back, now you come back to Israel, and the negative rhetoric now is not whether is saying that you're not Jewish or you're not biblically Jewish or
Right.
you're not this the land of Israel is not the biblical land of Israel. And I'm going, what? How foolish is that? I'm looking out my window here. I see Jeremiah's vineyard. Just we have a group that just came in yet last night, about 40 volunteers, and they're out harvesting in a little community called Migdalim here near Tapuk Junction. And and I told them, I said, you know what? We are seeing something that our ancestors for 2,000 years never saw. It is hard. It's difficult to look back and see the atrocities that we committed against the Jewish people. But it's also it was difficult. I think the prophet Ezekiel. How do you say Ezekiel in the
Yechezkel.
Hebrew? So the prophet
Yechezkel.
Ezekiel in verse 30 in chapter 36 says that when the Jews are outside of the land of Israel, that the nations profane my name. But when they return, it says in that chapter, it says when they return, the nations hallow my name. And I say, I'm living in a generation that my forefathers never saw. They didn't understand God because the Jews weren't in the land, significantly in the land. And the land of Israel actually looked desolate. It looked like it was also being punished by God. And here we are. The Jews are back. There's more Jews living here in the land of Israel than there's ever been in the history of the world.
Right.
How can we not know the God of Israel? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And we have a lot of differences, but my theologically and maybe spiritually we have a lot of differences, but the thing that pulls us together is I believe that God is going to establish the house of prayer for all nations.
Right.
That he's pulling the nations together. And when it's established, maybe we're all going to see things differently. But let's show up. Let's be here. I tell my children, if they show up at the wrong place on their wedding day, they're not getting married. I said, we got to show up in Jerusalem. We may not be Jewish, may not be Israelites, but our only hope to be part of the redemption is through this place. And so we have to connect to it. We have to. And it's hard. I'm feeling emotional right now, even talking about it. But it's like it's like here's your chance. Maybe before 1948, maybe God would have mercy on the nations for not understanding. But I'm worried now because God is showing himself so vividly.
Yep.
And if we have to get this, we have to get this. And I share with my Jewish friends, and my family, my Jewish family, that it's time for you. I believe you have the stage now. You have the place here to share the light that you're commanded to share to the nations. And the nations are paying attention, and they're going to either hear the negative or they're going to hear the positive. And you have to keep doing it. You can't just push us out just because you weren't in the land and we didn't understand and we didn't get the God of Israel 77 years ago. But now, wow, you got the best PowerPoint in the world. And this is huge. So we're here and we're trying to change the story. Honestly, we're trying to change the story. I'm still ashamed of what happened, over our history, our relationship and how we treated the Jewish people the arrogance that we demonstrated. And I'm ashamed right now that we're still in a lot of places, still showing the same arrogance.
You know,
Um, but we have to
well, I was
change
just
it.
going to say, I'm a big believer that we can't change the past. We can only learn from it and move forward.
Right.
So when somebody recognizes the mistakes of the past, but they make sure they don't repeat those mistakes again, they've learned from it and they can change the future. And it's a problem that I have, even here in my own community. You're in Samaria, I'm in Judea, I'm in Efrat. And, so when I look around and I see memorials being built to people from my community who were murdered and who lost their lives on October 7th and after, and who were murdered going on a family drive, and they're building memorials to these people using the families of the people who murdered them without thought because the labor is cheaper. We're still in the middle of a war. So to me, unfortunately, it makes me so sad because I'm like, I don't understand. Have people not learned their lesson? How do you make a change for the future if you haven't learned the mistakes of the past? And I believe that Hashem or God is, when he sends us a message, he's sending you the same message again and again because you didn't learn. So to me, October 7th was a real wake up call. I used to go sometimes shop at the store right outside our gate because it was cheaper, and Muhammad or whatever his name is seemed like a nice guy. I woke up October 7th. I learned my lesson. And it's so hard to see that people still haven't. And as horrible as October 7th was, we have the information today. We know that it could have been so much worse. The one thing that I've seen is it woke up so many Jews around the world and even so many Christians. I've met incredible people on Instagram, on TikTok, like some really good people who were woken up for the first time, who never thought a day in their life about being Jewish. And even Christians who woke up and said, wait a minute, what we're seeing coming out of Gaza, that's not the truth. And look at and they're staunch supporters of Israel today. But it's when some of my people around me who I love in my community, and I still feel like, unfortunately, people haven't learned that lesson. And it scares me because I do believe that Hashem keeps trying to send us a message when we don't learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard. It's also hard to change.
Yeah.
We just have a very difficult time changing. And if you're a Christian, your God is in the building that you built down the street, and that's all I need. Just a car to get that or some way to get to my building where God is. Why do I have to care? Why do I need to care about Israel? Why do I need to care about Jerusalem? Why do I need to care about the Jewish people? But it's one of the things that we have to acknowledge, and if there are Christians listening to this, is that we have to get back to the Bible, because what we did is we took God's word and we said, oh wow, our religion does away with the Torah. Here's the crazy thing is that the Torah, I have come to understand, because we have the amazing rabbis that teach us here in Har Brakah. I learned so strongly how the Torah is your identity. It is your marker. It's like when God says this is a sign between me and you, he's serious about that sign. So if I come in and I try to take that sign away from you through my religion, then that's a horrible. That's this, touching the apple of God's eye. It's not good to poke God in the eye. This is what we're doing. And so we have seen the main purpose for what we're doing here is we have to make the Jews stronger. We have to make the land flourish. We have to be part of the positive. The Christians are still talking about Jews, going through tribulation and doing all this other stuff, and I'm like, no, hey, with that. And also learn that prophecy has two things. It has a negative and a positive. This week, we're putting the blessing on Mount Gerizim right here where I'm at. It's a big deal. I'm sitting there like reading the Bible from the place that I'm at, and God's saying this is not complicated. If you want the blessing, do what I tell you to do.
Right.
And please, stop coming here trying to get Jews to do something other than what God has called them to do. And that's what I'm seeing, that we have to reverence one God. We have to reverence his word, because his word It's not, it's the same. We say in Christianity, the same yesterday, today, and forever. It doesn't change, and we see it. The story here, the narrative hasn't changed. We're still in a battle over Jewish identity, over Israel's identity, and we have to be fiercely standing on the side of God, to be
I
honest.
Yeah, I first of all, I agree with you, and you said something that's very important that was a crusade I went on the beginning of October 7th as well, is that, when people try to separate the Torah from the state of Israel, I do not care if somebody is religious or not observant, because really that is between them and God. But I think that you have to recognize that the reason, Magia lanu, why do we deserve the state of Israel? Because God gave it to us in the Torah. So if you cannot recognize that there is a Torah and that there is a God, then there's no reason for us to have this land. We could go to Uganda. The Jews wouldn't need a land. So to me, that is such an important thing. I know myself, I do a lot of things. I am not a perfect person. I do many things that my sleeves are a little short. I do many things I maybe shouldn't be doing, but I don't try to say that what I'm doing is right. I have my own relationship with God, and everybody has to have their own relationship with God. But when you start looking at something and trying to justify why what you're doing is okay, instead of saying, this is who I am, this is where I am today, you run into problems. So when people try to separate the fact, well-meaning people who try to, say this is our land, but if you can't recognize it as our land because God gave us this land in the Torah, then, you don't really have a leg to stand on in terms of fighting. So I think that that was such an important, point that you brought up. And I think that also, how were you accepted, right? I don't know what year it was that you came and brought your family. And are all of your children still here? And how were you accepted, because it's, again, what made me want to speak to you more and interview you was this attitude that you have about how important it is to help the Jews both become more observant and come back to their land. And that
Yeah,
that you felt was your duty. So a
a
lot of
hundred
questions.
percent, 100%. But yes, and obviously, you know, we weren't like welcome with open arms. This was we're here. Honestly, we are here because Rabbi Muhammad allowed us to be here. He he had this, and I'm going to use this in the right term, but he has a messianic vision that is so powerful. Like he saw us, and honestly, it was just like and I didn't have any. I was a selfish person. All I wanted to do was be part of the prophecy because the God that I believed in, the prophets said that there were these vineyards. I wasn't thinking about Jewish Christian relations. I wasn't thinking about anything. So we're all working in the field. Again, I'm not thinking. I'm just thinking. Whoa, we're here. We're working in Jeremiah's dream, his vision, his. This is God is alive. He's real, and we're just taking it all in spiritually. But Rabbi Muhammad saw us working, and he said, This is redemption. This is the nations, because the one missing thing that the Jews have had to live without for so long is they've never really significantly been able to bring the nations into the story. And so he saw us and he said, this is it. We can do this. And so he began to have visions of building buildings, because he knew the prophets said that there's going to be pilgrimages, right, to Jerusalem. Where are they going to stay? He starts thinking about stuff like crazy things, and he's like, every community needs to build a building just for the nations. We just need to have all the nations because it's going to happen. Like he's looking at it in real terms because everything's unfolding in this touchable reality. So it's going to happen. And so he saw us working and he began to weep. He was like emotional. And he thought, wow, this is a sign, another sign of that the redemption is coming. And I didn't understand that in the beginning, the weight of that, or the significance of that. But I know that right now, this is what our this is our calling, our place, is that we have to ignite the nations for this cause. Because I believe that there's a consequence for not standing. I believe the prophet Zechariah is just as correct as the prophet Jeremiah. that if you're standing with Israel, you're going to be blessed, just like the blessing and the curse. If
Right.
you're standing, you're going to be blessed in the Genesis 12. Then you're gonna there's a curse, and there's it's just not going to be good for us to do this. And God is not He's not a God of confusion, right? He's not okay. We're just going to God's going to create a bunch of fake Jews coming to a fake Israel, and that's going to be trick everybody into thinking that this. No, God, this is happening. The real Jews are coming back to the real place that God established. He determined. He elected. He brought. He assigned for this job. And the real miracle is how did you hang on? How did the Jews hang on? You didn't have a prosperity gospel like we claim to have. Where's your prosperity? Where at what time? My question is at what time did a young person not look at his father and mother and go, it doesn't look like it's working.
Right.
Like it's okay, Dad, we're 1,500 years. This is the time of Luther when he's writing all of his terrible things about the Jews. We're 1,500 years past the destruction of the temple. God's not coming back. That would be a normal response.
Right.
God's done with us. Luther's right. Calvin's right. All the church, the Christians are right. He's not coming back. It's over. But you held on. How? To me, I still ask that question. How did you do that? And to me, that's what I want to tell every Jew that I meet. It's like you kept God in the world. You
Right.
kept God in the world. For all of us, we would not today understand who God is, the God of the Bible, if you did not hold on to the promise. If you didn't hold on to the promise. And it's so significant. We would have been lost without that. And so we've got to do better. Every day I wake up, like I said, I've got to do better. We've got to, every Jew that I meet, I'm trying to tell him, you know what? Hold on. Don't be discouraged. Don't listen to the rhetoric. You held on in the worst of times. In the worst of times. You keep hanging on because the narrative is not going away. God is not going away. And you have an important role you have an important role to bring redemption to the world, not just to the Jewish people, but to the whole world. So
So
it's big time.
how do your children feel, and how many of them are in Israel?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I
I
didn't answer that
no,
question.
I want to say when I met your kids the first time, it was at the Fleischer's bar mitzvah, or I think it was your son-in-law's. When I tell you Tommy's daughter-in-laws look like you would think
Yeah,
they were religious settlers, and
right.
I don't like that
Yeah,
term, from Samaria. That is
yeah,
they are so sniyut, they are so
right,
modest, they are dressed beautifully with the same mitpachot on their heads.
right. Yeah, you have to understand that we did come from a place where where our girls, my wife, wore a head covering, and it was it was kind of like that. When you got married it's a practice within Christianity to wear a covering, some kind of covering. So when we came here, Rabbi Yonadav Zar, who's here, he's an amazing rabbi here in the community that he teaches us every week. And he started talking about modesty and these things, and how that the Jewish people are supposed to bring modesty into the world. How and so we started. We have these people, these ladies here in the community that are selling the head coverings and everything, and they would come down to our volunteers, and they put all their head coverings out, and they're all putting them on. And we just said, hey, okay, if this is a standard for modesty, then let's do it. And of course we did get some pushback. Wait a minute, you looking Jewish. I don't wear a kippah. So we're not. Nobody's selling kippahs here. For the Gentiles. For the women, it's a modesty thing. For that's why, and that's so we started kind of, I guess, we started doing that. Right now, I have 11 children, but I have 8 of them that are working with us now. 3 of them are in the States. Actually, one of those 3 is here right now for 3 months with their husband, or with her husband and their children. And and all of my children just really have a really deep love for Israel, a deep love for the Jewish people. I have a one son, my oldest son. He's got a prayer ministry. He prays for Israel every day.
Well,
So it's just I'm a very blessed man. All of my children love God, and they're not perfect like their dad, not perfect, but they're pursuing God. That blesses me. And so yeah, they're all doing really good. The 8 that are here are. You think I'm radical? They're like ready to put on the IDF soldier, the uniform and fight. But it's that's because they're here. They want this.
yeah, I think that I forgot what I was going to say, sorry. But I think that it's incredible because so few religious people, like I know plenty of people that have 9 kids, 10 kids, and most people have 1 or 2 that decided not to follow in their parents' footsteps. And I don't think it's anything the parents did wrong necessarily. I only have
Right.
4, and thank God all 4 of mine are religious, but I was luck because the community I live in, it's not the norm. There are usually some that go off. So the fact that you can say you have 11 children who are following in your ways is absolutely incredible. And like I said, I've met some of them and they are passionate. And I hope it's okay to say, but Tommy's sons and sons in law are the Israel guys. And any Christian listening, you should be listening to what they have to say because they tell the truth. I sent their videos. I have not Jewish friends in America, and when people are trying to talk about what's going on and Israel isn't okay, I always direct them to listen to the Israel guys because these are Christians on the ground in Israel who are telling you the truth. Don't tell me a Christian church was burned. Like, listen to what they have to say. They investigated the real story. So I think that's really incredible because it's something many of us don't have. So in that vein, and maybe this is a difficult question, and if you don't want to answer it, that would be okay. If one of your kids decided they wanted to convert to Judaism or something, would you be upset? Would you?
You know, that's a really good question. I learned this from the Jews. You always say it's a really good question. There's no question that, and Christianity has a real difficult time with that because we have our absolute truths, right? We have an absolute truth in 35,000 different denominations. Every one of them says we have absolute truth. You know, I we what I've ingrained in my children and and they've put in themselves is a real deep respect for the Jewish identity. To be honest, I don't. I feel like that if we stepped out of that place, because Rabbi Muhammad has taught us that there are prophecies that only we can do. Like there are prophecies only that the nations can do. Like there's a prophecy in Jeremiah 61 that Rabbi Muhammad likes. He says the foreigner will come and be your vine dresser and your plowman. This is a Isaiah 61 is like a redemption chapter. And so where are the foreigners going to be? If we all converted into Judaism, and we all just started, but who's going to be a real voice? Because I think if we converted, even though we have a deep respect for Judaism, which is a lot of Christians are still having a hard time for me to say that, because I think Judaism has such a strong place, and I'm learning so much about the Bible from the people that were stewards of the oracles of God. You know, there's so much profound understanding of the scriptures that we never understood as Christians. So but saying that, I think that there's such a work that the non-Jewish world needs to engage in, that we can only do. We are the ones that have to say the Psalms 126. What does it say? God has done great things for you, and then you respond, yes, God has done great things for us. The prophet Jeremiah, prophet Isaiah says in Isaiah 52, he says, "How beautiful are the feet of those who come to the mountains of Israel and say to Zion, your God reigns." And I tell our volunteers, I said, just tell the Jews that their God exists. Tell them that, thank you for returning to the land so we could understand that. But we have to, but without those Gentiles, without those nations doing that job, how do we really strengthen the Jewish people, and how do we encourage? How do we change? How are we? Because I believe that if the nations, if Christianity, I'm going to just say this, if Christianity would just look at the Bible and follow the scriptures and stand with Israel, the Middle East conflict, which we both live in the conflict. When somebody says the Middle East conflict, they're talking about the place we live in.
Exactly.
If we just got the church reading their Bibles to understand where the conflict is and how to stand with it, it would end tomorrow. It would absolutely end tomorrow. And so that's I don't know if that really answers your question. I don't, I just believe we're on, forgive me for saying this, but I know that we're on a mission. If you say, well, Tommy's a missionary, I'm a missionary to the church. I don't want to see the church going to hell. And I mean, honestly, there is judgment coming when we're not standing in the right place. And that sounds like a Baptist preacher, but this is our work, and it's so critical that I don't think it would be. And another thing too, to answer your question, I don't think it would be good for us, even if we're in that position. What do the rabbis ask me when I got it? You asked me how they some of them were opposed. What do they ask me? Do you think it would be okay for your children to marry our children? So you got to think about that. Okay, is he asking me, what's this question he's asking me? Am I going to be offended? Am I going to offend him saying, no, we would never marry your children? And I told him, I said, no, I don't think, I think assimilation is the sin of Balaam. That's what he tried to do, right? He tried to get the people from the nations. If you go in and assimilate and marry their children, then you can destroy all of Israel. That can't be our objective. Let's keep the nations in a righteous place. Let's keep the Jews in the place that they're going. I don't think it's a good practice for us to even think about converting and marrying other Jews. Not because we don't love them. We
Right.
adore our Jewish friends, but I think it's too close to that assimilation. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that you said something very important a little while ago, and that was it's almost a hard thing that people have to sort of wrap their own minds around, because on the one hand, I also know that when we rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, it's going to be a place for everyone to pray. So that means that not everybody has to have the same religion. But what I think is the same is I do think that we believe in the same God. And so I think maybe what's a little bit different is we believe Mashiach is Eliyahu Hanavi. You guys believe that that's Jesus. Meaning it's how we're going to get there. But ultimately, I don't know if it matters. I think if you are following the tenets of what your religion says and you're trying to be a better person, and you believe that part of your job in order to get to this ultimate place is to help the Jews do what we're supposed to do. I understand what you're saying is that, why do your kids need to convert? Because my understanding also is that the only thing non-Jews have to do is keep the Noahide laws. And you're doing that. And so I don't think that God thinks that every single one of us has to believe the same thing, but ultimately it's about believing in one God. And I think that that's something that we do believe is all the same. So,
Right.
I totally understand what you're saying. So let me ask you then, how did your kids find their other people? Are all of your kids married? And the ones that are, how did they find their marriage partners?
You know what? We bring them here. They're all volunteers. They all. That's why my Hebrew is still terrible, is
I was
because we
going to
keep
ask if you
bringing.
speak Hebrew.
My children are all speaking Hebrew, and they're very fluent in it. But most every conversation I have is with volunteers that are coming from different parts of the world. Most of them are coming from Canada and U.S., Europe. All speak English. So I'm living in this world here where I'm you know getting this message out, but it's not. I'm not like inside the Jewish community. It's like I'm not inside. My children are, because they're working with the farmers and they're doing all these other things. My job now is just giving a message, a biblical message from the Bible to non-Jews, and that's it. That's all I do. And then when I meet, and I do meet Jews, a lot of Jews, and a lot of Jews are coming here this week because we're putting the blessing on Mount Gerizim,
I want
and
to come
and
now.
and I love. What's that?
I said, I want to come.
Yeah.
Thought
So you
about
come
that.
up here and read. Yeah, come put the blessing. Receive that blessing from Mount Gerizim, and it's such an opportunity for me to say, wow, you are amazing. You are a gift to the world. This is what we have to say. This is the God is doing great things for you, and don't believe the other rhetoric. It's a lie. So this is our place.
Well, well, I think that it's, like I said, I think it's an incredible story. I think it's an incredible journey. And I think that you are fortunate both to those of us who live here know being able to live here is like, you know, amazing.
Yes.
And you've got a lot to be proud of, the fact that you've raised these 11 kids to know God and to, some of them follow in your footsteps is really amazing. And can you tell us a little bit more about the types of people that you're bringing and what they're doing? And maybe there's people out there who want to get involved. And can Jews come to work with you guys as well?
No Jews allowed.
Okay.
I say that, but honestly, this is this is a program for the nations, and it is for us to get back on track. The discussion is how to, Rabbi Yonadav, he tells us, Tommy, you have to fix Christianity. You have to fix it. So in order to fix it, we have to bring Christians here, and we have to sit them here on Mount Gerizim. We bring the rabbis in. We open our Bibles up, and we're re-looking at what the Bible is saying from a Jewish perspective, from an Israel perspective. So we can't. Now we have every denomination coming. We've had, we right now we have Catholics here. We have, you name the denomination, they've been here. We've had Mormons here. We've had, and some, and I hate to even mention the people are here because we're so denominationally messed up that if I say a name that one of our denominations really doesn't like, then they're not coming. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? That's how bad we are.
Well,
But the goal here is not some ecumenical everybody. Everybody's okay. The problem is everybody's not okay. None of us are okay. We have to do better. No matter what denomination you're part of, you have to come here and you have to get the download. What the prophets yearn for, what they long to see, is happening in our generation. So let's bring it back. Let's change our denomination. Let's get out of our buildings and come here and stand with the people of Israel. We can change the story. We have the ability to change the story. We just have to have. But now pastors, unfortunately, they're coming here. I've had huge pastors with huge congregations come here and say, "We get it. I understand, I see it in the Bible, but when they get behind the pulpit, they get behind their podium, they can't, they don't have the koach, they don't have the strength, the courage to
Right.
say truth. Because some of their people are listening to Candace Owens, or somebody's listening to Tucker Carlson.
Right.
Somebody in their church is getting their stuff, and they're going to leave their, stop it. We're going to have to get courageous in this battle. And especially our pastors, and you got to start preaching it, because I guarantee you, if Jeremiah were here today, he'd be dancing out here, and all the prophets would be like going, "What in the world is going on? You say you believe in God, and you're behaving like this. This doesn't make any sense to us." So it's a great time to be alive, but it's also, there's a greater accountability for being alive right now, and we gotta take that responsibility and move forward.
Oh, I agree with you. First of all, I am so happy that I'm sitting here in Israel watching from afar what's going on in the rest of the world. That's one thing. Number two, to me, when you talk about the different denominations of Christianity, Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, to me, it's no different than Chabad, Breslov, Gur Hasidim. Like, we also, within Judaism, we have different sects. We believe in the same Torah, we believe in the same God, but we might just do things a little bit different, differently, but we're all
Right.
the same. So to me, that was always the same. And I don't know if you want to hear my one church story, but sometimes I like to bring up my own past things. So when I was young, from the time I was maybe about 11 until I was about maybe 14 or 15, my best friend was not Jewish. My best friend Julia, she was not Jewish. And we used to, most weekends, like I would sleep at her house, she would sleep at my house, and her family went to church on Sunday. So if I slept over, I remember the very first time I went with them to church, like her mother said, you don't need to come, but we still wanted to be together. So I went, and I remember that was a Sunday where I think they might have been Methodist or Presbyterian, where they called row by row, they called them down to get a piece of like the
Oh yeah,
host and drink
where
some
they
grape
gave you
juice.
the,
And her
yeah.
mother said to me, you don't need to do this. Like, she knew I was Jewish. She's like, you don't need to do this. But I was like 11, 12 years old. And I was embarrassed to be the only person sitting there. Like, how could I not do that? So I remember I went, I stuck it in my mouth. And I knew I shouldn't eat it or drink it or whatever. So when I was done, I like spit it all out into my hand and whatever. I think I pretended to drink the juice, and I spit the cracker out like into my hand, because I remember even then as like a kid, like I knew this wasn't my religion, but like we were just best friends and we just wanted to still continue hanging out, and after church we could hang out and whatever. So that was my one, my one church story. But they were even then respectful. They knew I was Jewish. They knew I was an Orthodox Jew. Like my family had just become
That's
religious.
amazing.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
my family had like
that's
just become
amazing.
religious.
You had a very good friend there, because that would be concerned about you and telling you that,
Yeah.
because I don't think most Christians, if you were staying in their house, they would be, sticking their chest out, going, "Hey,
Yeah. No, I remember her
we
mom saying to me, you don't need to do this,
right."
and well, whatever. I was a kid, so that was that.
That's good.
Well, it's
Well, thank God you didn't lose your way,
yeah.
and you're here. You're on the mountains of Israel. You're back in the land. You're declaring God's name. You're hallowing God's name and bringing a good name to the world. And this has to be, this is the story that needs to be brought to the nations, and it's got to go to every corner of the world now. It's not just, and I don't think people really understand it. It's not just about Israel being established. It's how Israel affects the rest of the world,
Right.
because it brings everything into alignment. We're ready for the redemption,
Yes.
and and it's going to be good. It's going to be a hard fight to get there. I told our
Yeah.
guys, I said, it may get tougher. We may need, don't be discouraged. And I use that example. The Jews never let go, never let go. And we right now, because we're seeing what we're seeing, we can also never let go, and we're going to stand no matter what. And this is it.
This I like that so much. Thank you so much. So let me ask
Thank
you
you.
again. We've spoken a little bit about this throughout, but my last question is always like, what does spirituality mean to you? And,
Yeah.
that kind of almost seems redundant with this entire conversation that we've had, but I always ask it like that. So I'm going to ask you as well, because to me, spirituality and religion are not necessarily the same thing. People can be spiritual and not be religious, and people can be religious and not be spiritual. So,
Right. Yeah, I think that that's the hardest thing for us, and I'm sure it is with most religions or in Judaism as well. Keeping that where you that deep inner connection with God. Honestly, I don't think that I have ever experienced what I experienced 21 years ago when I came here, when I realized for the first time that God was touchable, that it wasn't some mythology, like it was either going to be a mythology or it was really going to be something real in the cosmos somewhere. That's where we're all going to be brought out of this world. The world is in Christianity. It's sad because the thing that we learned from all of this is that because we disconnected from the Jewish and Israel redemption, we had to start believing that the world was actually going to be totally destroyed, which would have been kind of a weird, if you think about it. What does redemption mean? What is if you're going to save the world, if salvation is coming to the world, that means that what happened in the Garden of Eden is going to be fixed, right? We're going to be back in that place where we're having communion with God again. And that to me is the thing that that's come alive to me spiritually, is that the reality and the yearning for just being in this next step in building the temple, the house of prayer, is that we just want to be close to God. We just have to be close to God. And here I'm hearing, this is I feel like in a real sense that I'm understanding my messianic theology, and I want to be careful about that because but I understand it totally different than I did before. That it's bringing me to the house of prayer, and it's bringing me to Jerusalem. It's bringing me to this place, to this mountain. It's bringing me to a desire to motivate, because it's not just believing and having faith in this, but everything about the redemption is driving our moral compass. It drives our how we treat our husbands and our wives and our everything about it. It's motivation. We're not just being good because good is good.
right.
We're not just being holy or righteous because righteous is good. We all know righteousness is good.
Right.
But for some of us, if there's something coming that demands us to be holy, to be righteous, to be good, then the motivation is strong. It's like the whole idea that God is going to present himself again here on earth, his dwelling place in Jerusalem forever, he says. I can't wait till we are, you and I both, we're going to be seeing God in Jerusalem. It may be in our generation, and may it be in our time. We've never been this close, I don't think.
I agree with you. When I look at what's going on around us, I say the time has to be coming soon,
Yeah.
because things are going on that you could never imagine in 2025 should be
Right.
going on. And I'm with you. I believe, and I would so much rather be here in Israel helping bring about that redemption than having to watch it from over there and make the painful journey here. And
Right.
it's amazing. It's unbelievable. And I agree with you that I hope that it's soon, because we really, really, really need it, and in our day, because
Amen.
it's something that's so much needed. And
Amen.
if people want to get in touch with either you or your organization, where's the best place for people to find you?
They can actually. It's pretty simple. Our organization is called Ha-Yovel.
Hmm.
If you can remember Ha-Yovel, you
Yeah,
can go to Ha-Yovel.com. But Serve
I'll link it.
Israel, serve link serveisrael.com,
Hmm.
because Serve Israel it will bring you to everything, bring you to our website, bring you to the volunteer opportunities and all the stuff, and also bring you to Ha-Yovel and understanding, who we are and what we're doing, what our objective is. The other thing is the Israel guys, like you mentioned, the Israel guys, theisraelguys.com, is they're doing amazing thing. They have almost right now we're getting several million views a week.
Yep.
I mean a month. I'm sorry, several million views a month, and sometimes more. Some of our it's unbelievable what it has turned in, and they're getting they're not they didn't they would they're not doing it from a professional deal. They didn't start off as professionals, but they're getting better and better. They're
They're
getting more.
they're fantastic. They're great. I'm going to link everything you said. I'm going to link so people can find it, find their YouTube page, their Instagram. I follow them on Instagram because they are doing important work. I think having Christians from within Israel tell the truth to other Christians, I think is so important because they are so easily able to refute what people who are not on the ground here are trying to tell other people is the truth. And I think that it's God's work. I think it's such important work.
Yeah, and if you want to reach me, you can always email me, Tommy at Ha-Yovel. It's Hayov like Victor EL.com, and ask me a question. And I also understand the Jews that are out there. We don't deserve to be trusted, because we have a lot of ground to make up for the atrocities committed by our forefathers. So I do understand that, but we purposely, and I'll say this again, and it wasn't it just this is the way it fell for us, but we are probably I don't know of another Christian organization that has rabbinical oversight.
Right.
We have rabbinical oversight here. Everything we do, every video, I just sent a discussion that I had with it because I'm speaking to Christians, right, and to Rabbi just last week, and I said, look at this. Is there anything in here? I'm wanting, because it's important for me that because we're guests here, we're not. This is not a Christian community we're developing here. We're an outreach of Harbarakah. This community here, we're not trying to establish anything. We're not trying to take Christian ground, and we're not like the Crusaders who are coming in here taking things that are not ours. We are totally submitted to the farmers of Israel. We don't own everybody. The people ask me, do you have a vineyard? Do you have wine that you sell? No, we don't have anything. We just support the Jewish community 100%. And we're sitting here again under the oversight of Rabbi Malamed and everybody here, and it's beautiful. I don't think I could have landed anywhere else. I don't know another rabbi that would have the courage to take us in, especially me. Tater Peeler Road. I never met a religious Jew. I was like the worst candidate for this whole thing, except we did have our heart to find God, and we found him. He's here, and so that's to me the most beautiful thing.
I do have to ask you one more question that just came up in my mind. I'm sorry, but everything you're saying is so interesting. How did you educate your kids here? How old were they when you got here? I know this should have been in the middle, but I just forgot to ask. How did you educate your kids, and how old were they when they came?
Yeah, well, that's a sensitive question in the Jewish community because I know every Jewish mother wants their children to be doctors and lawyers. And education is a big deal.
Yes, but I'd be
Oh,
happy at
and
this point with a construction worker or a farmer. It would
yeah,
not bother me if that's what my kids did
I
because
always
we
felt
need
that
Jews to do
about
that.
you. Yeah, but so education is important for us. But we one of our processes of our journey was that we didn't feel like that public school or even the private schools that were available to us were teaching the things that we wanted to teach spiritually and the influence there. I both Sherry and I graduated from university We did everything, you can imagine wrong, growing up. Uh, but we didn't want the same for our children, and so we there was a movement, a homeschooling movement. We began homeschooling. We began to get, and we had curriculum. It's not like my children are brilliant. They're Rav Yonadav always talks about how all of his children are geniuses. I don't know if my children are genius, but they're brilliant. They are amazing young women and young men, and with their own children now. I have 51 grandchildren,
Wow. Lainahara.
51, and
Wow.
more on the way.
Wow.
So there's a force that's being that's being created here within our family to make a difference. And I think if our children can grow and get their place where in the place where God is so relevant right now, so needed in the world, that we have to be. I encourage them. This is yeah. If your calling is to be a doctor or anything, but that right now for me and my children, it seems, and I want to be careful. I don't want to be offensive, but to be a doctor or a lawyer or some you know media or some kind of a real estate mongrel or whatever, that just seems so insignificant to me compared to what we're the place that we're in right now. And
Nope.
I'm thankful they're out there in the fields right now, working and singing and it's they're making a difference. So
I
I,
think
I pray that they keep going in that.
I think that that is incredible. And if Ha-Yovel could bring us some people to do construction and some construction projects,
We
that would be
got them.
fantastic.
We're working on that.
And
We do
and
have.
let them train the Jews, you know.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with an honest day's physical labor. I think it's great.
yeah, yeah.
So,
We're working on a lot of that right now. We actually have already done some building projects here.
okay, good.
So,
I'd like to see
yeah,
that.
it's good.
Well,
Hallelujah.
I just want to thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation, and I know people are going to love hearing what you have to say.
I hope so. I hope they, I know that it's hard for some people, especially in the Jewish community, to think that it could, be not believe what I'm saying or not. But it's real. It's happening, and we're seeing it, and it's, I'm sorry that we we messed up. But we can change the story, and we're working on changing the story, and for the good of the world. So thank you, Dara, for allowing me to be here and just to share our story. Hopefully, it's an encouragement to the Jewish people. I want to be. I tell all of our even our volunteers today that we read actually the in Deuteronomy 7. This is, I said this morning to our group, I said, this is the way God feels about the Jewish people. He says in chapter 7 verse 6 in Deuteronomy, he says, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God. God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples of the face of the earth. And I said, if we can just leave that with the Jewish people to remind them that they are a special treasure to God. And because they're a special treasure to God, they're a special treasure to us as well. And this is important, that Jewish identity. This is Jewish identity, and we can't. God's word is God's word, and so we have to be that, and we have to believe this, and to come against and say something different other than what God is saying is a desecration of His name, and so
We could
yeah.
not end on anything better than that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I wanted to just quickly tell you about the Jacob sheep. Okay, this is something that maybe some of you have heard of, maybe some of you haven't heard of, but already here in Israel, this rare breed of Jacob's sheep, which many people believe are descended from Yaakov, right, the Hebrew patriarch, had been brought back to Israel to fill the land. A growing family from the herd can be visited in Judea and Samaria in the small biblical town of Beit El. If you visit BeitelZoo.com, that's BeitelZoo.com, you can arrange your visit to these historic sheep with spots and stripes and many horns. So I think it's a great idea if you're here in Israel, whether you're Jewish, whether you're not Jewish, and you're here on some type of pilgrimage, going to visit these sheep might be a great addition to your trip. Hey guys, I'm so excited to have Rabbi Tuly here with us today. When I set out to do this podcast, I knew there were so many different people that could talk to us about what the Torah says about how we as Jews should behave around Christians, should treat Christians. And I just felt like Rabbi Tuly was one of these people, because of the organization that I believe you founded, that he works with, Israel 365, that he would be the perfect person to do this. Not to mention, I actually met Tommy's son-in-laws the first time with you at the Knesset when we went to hear, with Ohad Tal, when we went to hear Bibi speak at Congress. That was actually where I met them. So you're definitely the perfect person to give us the scoop on this.
Dara, first of all, thank you for having me and thank you for doing this show. It's such an important topic, and most people aren't even talking about it or paying attention to the nuances. So I think that what you're doing is really important. Look, the Torah talks a lot about how when we go back to Israel, it's not going to be by ourselves. It's going to be really with the deep, sincere and meaningful assistance of the righteous nations and the righteous Gentiles. And for all of our history, we had the opposite relationship with Christians. And now all of a sudden you have all these amazing righteous Gentiles, but we don't even know how to frame that. It scares us, and so we push them away, sometimes intentionally, but many times unintentionally. Israel 365 is trying to find important ways to build bridges with our Christian allies that are meaningful in a two-way street, that they definitely benefit Israel, but it really benefits our Christian community as well. And there's so many people who believe that America's blessing is because America stands with Israel, and therefore, if for a second America doesn't stand with Israel, there are millions of Americans who are afraid of the curse that would bring onto the United States, and they make that very clear to their elected officials. And it's a really important relationship for political reasons, but also for spiritual reasons.
That's great. Thank you so much. Is there anything in particular? Are there other psukim maybe where the Torah talks specifically about?
Many. In fact, I could write a book. And we actually have written a book. It's called the Israel Bible. And it talks a lot about how throughout the Navi, it describes the non-Jewish people helping us, and there are definite stages of Geula. The Geula is spelled out very clearly in the Tanakh. Most people don't really read it sensitively. But the steps are that there will be the physical ingathering of the exiles, the kibbutz galiot from all over the world, and they're going to come to Israel. And that's step one. Step two is that then the land will come back to life again. Once there's farmers and hardworking Jewish people who love the land of Israel, it will, come back to life. And those are the physical stages of Geula. Each one of those stages, it doesn't say that the Jewish people are doing it by ourselves. So if you look at Yeshayahu, Perak Mem Tet, Pasuk Chaf Bet, these are the Haftorahs we read at this time of year. And it says when you go back, the land will be ruined, but it will come back to life again. It will become crowded once again. And thus says Hashem, I will raise my hand to the nations and lift up my sign to all the peoples, and they shall carry your sons in their bosoms and carry your daughters on their backs. So our Tanakh says that the Goyim are going to carry the Jewish people back to Israel. They take that very, very literally. Ko amar Adonai Elohim hine asa el goyim yadi ve'el arim nisi ve'eviu banayich bechotzein ubinotayich al katef tinasena. So they want to help us with Aliyah, and they are. And I could talk for hours about how much they help us with Aliyah from day one with Theodore Herzl, Ad Hayom Hazeh. And similarly, the next Nevuah that has to happen is also in Yeshayahu, and it's like Perek, I think it's Perek Samech, where it talks about, this is like the Ha-Yovel pasuk, where it talks about how the land will be desolate, it will come back to life again. And they shall build the ancient ruins, raise up the desolations of old, and renew the ruined cities, the desolations of many ages. Strangers shall stand and pasture your flocks, aliens shall be your plowmen and your vine trimmers. So it says, Ubanu charvot olam shemamot rishonim yekimemu, v'chidshu arei chorev shalmemot dor vador, v'amdu zarim v'ra'u tzonechem, u'bnei nechar yikarechem v'chormechem. So again, it doesn't just say that the Jewish people are going to be very successful on our kibbutzim and that we're going to drain the swamps and export food all over the world in 5 minutes, but it's going to be with the assistance of the Goyim. The Goyim are going to help us. And if they're not part of the plan, it's not Hashem's plan anymore. And then it goes sort of off. It has to be according to Hashem's plan because this Geula is for our generation. And so we need to be reading the Tanakh more sensitively and know our role as the Jewish people, but also know the role of the non-Jews. You have very evil non-Jews. We have to know what the Torah says, how to treat evil non-Jews, and then you have very righteous non-Jews. But you can't fight the evil non-Jews if you don't have the allies of the righteous amongst the nations, and we have that more than we've ever had in our history. So it's such a special time, like we are on the cusp of the Geula.
First of all, I absolutely feel it, and I think that anybody who's really looking feels it. If you look at what's going on around us, it's an unbelievable time to really be alive, even though it can be frustrating, a lot of the things we see, but it's really pretty incredible. Let me ask you, though, what do you have to say? People have this fear that we let Christians into the country and they're going to try to convert us because we've all heard for so long. Like, I spent time, talking to Tommy at this JNS symposium, and I was shocked because I had never heard a point of view like his. I guess I hadn't had enough contact myself with Christians or non-Jews who think the way he does. But so often we have this fear that if you let them in, that they're going to try to proselytize and they're going to try to convert us. So,
right. So it's a very important question. It's the most important question because until we have a very compelling answer to that question, this is never going to happen. And I think that many Christians don't know the history and they don't really understand their role and our role, how they look at it and we look at it as different worlds. They're looking at America first. And honestly, I don't blame them. If I was, a non-Jew in America, I would be America first. They don't understand Israel. It's not their fault. They didn't learn anything about Israel. Anything. Zero. Maybe the pastor would once a year say, I stand with Israel. But they don't have we grow up, our whole world is about Israel. Like, it's part of our neshama. Once Christians understand there's history there, and why do Jews and Christians relate it to, and this whole thing about why are we so afraid of missionaries? Missionaries is a way for them, it's a very positive concept. Why are we so afraid of that very positive concept? We have to understand our history. They don't know our history. We just have we need fellowship. We need reconciliation. We need to not be afraid of them. We need to talk these things out. I don't have the answers. No one today has the answers. We need to bring a lot of committed, passionate, sincere, respectful people to the table. And maybe we'll offend each other along the way. That's fine. We've built such bridges with the Christians that we're in touch with over the last 10 years that now's our chance through, our work in the World Zionist Congress and the World Zionist Organization to take this mission of the importance of reconciliation, Jews and Christians, and to strengthen Christian Zionism and to fight against replacement theology. We need to work together, and the World Zionist Congress is the place to start. That is the parliament of the Jewish people set up by Theodore Herzl in 1897 with prophetic wisdom that God clearly blessed the hands of Theodor Herzl. And we as religious Zionists can say that proudly. Not all parties in the World Zionist Congress feel the same way. It's complicated. I'm not judging them. I think we have to understand their history and their concerns. And by working with non-Jews, it like kind of forces Jews to act on a little bit on better behavior, which is a good thing. We should be on our best behavior. The world certainly judges us with a dual standard. But we just have to learn each other, and the goal is the same. The goal is Geula. The goal is Mashiach. What exactly that looks like, we don't know. They don't know. We'll figure it out together because we know who our enemy is.
That's great. That's kind of the way I started thinking, is that I realized nobody knows what it is in the end, but if we're all working together and we're all being nice to each other and listening to each other, that, and I think a lot of that starts with listening to each other and not being afraid to hear what somebody different than you has to say. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to be willing to listen and not just screaming and yelling and, or not listening because you are too scared. Right. You have to be open to listening.
So
I think.
the other thing that we do at Israel 365 that we share in common with Ha-Yovel, why don't we work with every big, large Christian, ministry? We don't work with the big players because the big players don't understand Judea and Samaria the way the Wallers, Ha-Yovel understands Yehuda v'Shomron. They understand what it means to the Israelis, the Jewish people. Whereas an American ministry is watching the same garbage news and is coming to see it as the source of the problems. They don't understand what this is about. That's why we're together pushing for Ribonut, sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And now's the time.
Yes.
You look at the historical arc. This is the minute. This is the day. This is the week, the month, the year for sovereignty. And we can't do it by ourselves. We're going to do it, by teaching the Bible. This isn't even about politics. This is about just learn your Bible. We want to have the first interfaith Jewish-Christian Bible study together. It's going to be huge. And here is the official positions that Jews and, there's a lot that Jews and Christians don't agree on in the Bible. And that's fine. We'll get there. We'll talk about that. I'm not afraid of that conversation either. Right. But right now, let's talk about what we do believe. And what we do believe is that God created the heavens and the earth in Genesis. And that God gave the land to whoever, the 70 nations he wanted to give it to. And he gave America to the Americans, and he gave France to the French, and he gave Israel to the Jewish people, okay? And that was his right as the creator of the world, and that's why the Torah even begins that way. It could have began later with the commandments. That is something that religious Zionists, Jews, and Christian Zionists agree on. And that's an amazing place for us to start. And that's the first issue that we're going to work on together. Sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. Achshav. Ribonut Achshav.
I agree with you. It can't come too soon. And lastly, I also think that the people who are so scared to hear what Christians have to say or listen, I almost feel like they don't know who they are. Because if you're very secure in who you are, you can listen to what other people have to say because you're not threatened, because you know who you are. And I feel like a lot of us, we know who we are, so we could be open-minded enough to be able to listen to what other people have to say.
I can't agree with you more. Maybe your show here is the right forum for these conversations. I could introduce you and your audience to a lot of really, really amazing Christians you could ask them anything. I'm a Christian, ask me anything.
That's great. If there's
I'm a Jew, I'm an Israeli soldier, ask me anything.
That's great. If there's anyone you want me to link in the show notes, or any sources, or where to purchase, from 365 the Israel Bible, send me anything you think is important and I'm happy to link it.
For sure.
And also any of the links to where people can find you.
If your audience, wants to if say some in your audience like this vision, we're calling this universal Zionism. Okay? I could explain more about what universal Zionism is all about. But if you believe in this or even are curious to learn more, join us at Universal Zionism, where, we are going to figure all of this out together. And if you're interested in learning more about Christians in Judea and Samaria together, look up the Israel 365 MAGA mission to Israel. We just led this group a week ago, and we totally, transformed their hearts. They were only looking at it from a political view, and we showed them their faith, and we changed their lives. We blew their minds. And this is, if you're curious to learn about Israel 365, Israel 365 Action, and the World Zionist Congress, and Universal Zionism, just look up that. Look us up on Google and see, those articles, and you'll get for yourself an understanding of what this is all about and the potential that we have in working together.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate your coming on.
All right. Dara, it's a pleasure.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and all of its guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Yakir Abelow for editing this podcast.